She didn't resist when they handcuffed her. At the shooting range, no badge, no explanation needed. Just a quiet woman hitting impossible targets who refused to identify herself. The small-town courtroom prepared for a routine arraignment until heavy doors swung open. A Navy Admiral in full-dress uniform walked silently down the center aisle. Military veterans stood at attention. The judge's face drained of color as she read the sealed documents. And suddenly everything changed. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story intrigues you, please consider subscribing to hear more untold stories of extraordinary service and the heroes who walk among us, never asking for the recognition they deserve. Dawn breaks over a remote civilian shooting range in coastal Maine. Fog clings to targets as shooters begin to arrive. Among them is a woman in her mid-30s, unremarkable in every visible way. She wears faded jeans, a plain gray jacket, and a baseball cap pulled low. Nothing about her draws attention as she walks quietly to the farthest lane, carrying a long case. Frank Holden, the range safety officer, sips his morning coffee and watches through the glass of his small booth. 22 years in the Navy, followed by a decade, running this range had given him an eye for people. Most shooters he could categorize immediately. Hunters sighting in rifles for the season. Competitive shooters with their specialized gear. Weekend warriors playing tactical games. This woman didn't fit any category. She sets up at the farthest lane, methodically assembling her rifle with practiced movements that suggest years of experience. Her first shots hit center mass with uncanny precision. Then, without adjusting her scope, she switches to targets at increasingly impossible distances. Frank notices her breathing technique. The controlled 4-count inhale, the steady hold, the relaxed exhale as she pulls the trigger. Most telling is how she adjusts for wind without equipment, sensing changes that even seasoned hunters would miss. A nervous patron approaches Frank. That woman at the end. Something's not right. She's hitting targets that shouldn't be possible with that setup, and she's got no ID badge. 20 minutes later, 2 local police officers arrive. They approach us cautiously, hands near holsters. "Ma'am, we need to see some identification and your permit for that weapon," the senior officer says. The woman turns calmly, hands visible. "Is there a problem, officer? ID and permit, please." Her face betrays nothing as she replies, "I don't have those with me." A search reveals no wallet, no phone, just a key card with no identifying marks and a small notebook with what appears to be coordinates. "You're going to need to come with us, ma'am." She doesn't resist when they handcuff her. No protest, no explanation, just quiet compliance that somehow unnerves the officers more than resistance would have. As they escort her to the police cruiser, Frank notices something striking. Her eyes continuously scan the tree line, the road, the mountain range in the distance, as if she's calculating something only she can see. The sheriff's office in Coastal Harbor is small, 3 holding cells, a booking area, and offices for the sheriff and 2 detectives. The woman sits silently during processing, offering no resistance to fingerprinting, but providing no information. "Name?" asked the booking officer. Silence. "Address?" Nothing. "You understand refusing to identify yourself is a crime, right?" She meets his gaze with calm, steady eyes, but says nothing. Detective Marcus Wells takes over, attempting various interrogation techniques, friendly conversation, implied threats about federal charges, mentions of cooperation benefits. She responds with respectful silence to each approach. "Got ourselves a real mystery woman," jokes a deputy. "Maybe she's a Russian spy." Others laugh. When left alone in her cell, subtle changes appear in her demeanor. She examines the room with measured precision, noting camera positions, identifying blind spots, timing guard rotations. Through her cell window, she carefully studies the building layout, marking emergency exits and security protocols. "Prints came back empty," Wells tells the sheriff. "Nothing in local or state databases." "Try federal," the sheriff suggests. "System's down," Tech says. "We can try again tomorrow." A rookie officer brings her water. As she accepts the cup, her sleeve rides up slightly, revealing a small distinctive scar on her wrist, the kind of mark left by specialized training exercises involving rope descents from helicopters. "That's an interesting scar," the officer comments. "Rock climbing accident?" she replies, her first words in hours. As they prepare her for arraignment the next morning, Wells notices something odd. Despite facing serious charges, despite the orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, she carries herself with unshakable calm. Not the defiance of a career criminal or the fear of someone in trouble, but the patience of someone who knows something everyone else doesn't. As deputies escort her to the courthouse van, she briefly glances toward the harbor where a naval vessel can be seen in the distance. For just a moment, the smallest change crosses her expression. The coastal harbor courthouse dates back to 1887, its wooden benches and ornate railings speaking to a simpler time. Today, it's packed beyond capacity, curious locals, reporters from Portland papers, and unusually, several men in dark suits positioned strategically around the room. Judge Eleanor Harmon looks irritated as she reviews the docket. At the defendant's table, the woman sits quietly next to her frustrated public defender. "Your Honor, I'd like to request a continuance," the defender says. "My client has been uncooperative and I haven't been able to prepare adequately." From the gallery, a man in a suit stands. "Your Honor, I'm Special Agent Thomas from Homeland Security. We're requesting immediate transfer of the defendant to federal custody pending investigation of potential threats to national security." Before the judge can respond, another voice joins in. "The FBI has jurisdiction here, Your Honor." A different suited man approaches. "We have reason to believe this relates to an ongoing investigation." The judge bangs her gavel. "Enough!" "This is still my courtroom. We will proceed with arraignment, and then I will consider jurisdictional arguments." The clerk reads charges: possession of unregistered firearms, refusal to identify to law enforcement, potential terrorist activity. The defendant remains impassive, eyes focused forward, posture perfect. "How does the defendant plead?" Judge Harmon asks. Before the public defender can answer, the heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom swing open. Every head turns as a Navy Admiral in full dress uniform walks in, medals gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Two officers flank him, equally formal in their appearance. The gallery falls silent. Without announcement or permission, the Admiral walks directly down the center aisle. Military veterans throughout the room instinctively stand at attention. Even the judge straightens her posture. The Admiral approaches the bench and hands a sealed document to the bailiff, who delivers it to Judge Harmon. As she breaks the seal and reads, her expression shifts from annoyance to surprise to grave understanding. After a long moment, she looks up. "In light of this documentation from the Department of Defense, All charges against the defendant are dismissed effective immediately. This case is classified as a matter of national security." She bangs her gavel with finality. "Court is adjourned." The room erupts in confused murmurs as the Admiral approaches the defendant. The bailiff quickly removes her handcuffs. For the first time, the woman speaks clearly, her voice carrying authority despite its softness. "Sir, I apologize for the inconvenience." The Admiral's response silences the room. "On the contrary, Commander, the Navy apologizes to you." At the word Commander, every military person present, including 2 bailiffs, several observers, and even Agent Thomas, snap to perfect attention in obvious respect. Detective Wells watches in amazement as the woman's entire demeanor transforms. No longer attempting to be invisible, she stands tall, shoulders squared, the deliberate military bearing now unmistakable. Without the intentional posture of ordinariness, she suddenly commands the room just as powerfully as the Admiral. "Commander Hayes has been operating under classified orders," the Admiral says. "The situation required discretion." Outside the courthouse, reporters clamor for information as the woman, now changed into civilian clothes provided by Navy officers, stands beside the Admiral near a black government SUV. Sheriff Daniels approaches them, confusion and respect battling on his face. "Admiral, with all due respect, my department deserves some explanation. We've been treating this as a potential terrorist threat." "Sheriff, I understand your concern." The Admiral replies, "Commander Hayes is one of our most decorated special operators. The details of her assignment remain classified, but I can assure you she poses no threat to your community. Quite the opposite." Detective Wells steps forward. "Commander, I owe you an apology." She meets his eyes directly, no longer hiding behind careful blankness. "No apology necessary, Detective. You were doing your job." An elderly man in a VFW cap approaches cautiously. "Excuse me, ma'am. I was a corpsman with the Marines in Desert Storm. Been sitting in that courthouse all morning. I knew there was something familiar about the way you carried yourself." He extends his hand. "Thank you for your service, whatever it is you do." The woman shakes his hand firmly. "Thank you for yours." The Admiral checks his watch. "Commander Hayes, we should proceed. Operation Silent Harbor requires debriefing, and Washington is waiting for your report." Sheriff Daniels' eyes widen. "Silent Harbor, the counter-terrorism operation that prevented the port attack last year." The Admiral remains professionally vague. "Commander Hayes has given 12 years of exemplary service to this country. Much of it will never be known to the public." As they move toward the waiting vehicle, something remarkable happens. The law enforcement officers present, including those who had arrested and detained her, form an impromptu honor corridor. The military personnel among them salute as she passes. Detective Wells watches, finally understanding what had seemed so odd about her from the beginning. She wasn't trying to hide guilt. She was trained to hide excellence. Sunset casts long shadows across the now empty shooting range. Frank, the range safety officer, checks the last lanes before closing. A government vehicle pulls up and Commander Hayes steps out. Her demeanor is subtly different now. Without needing to hide her capabilities, she moves with the fluid efficiency of someone at the absolute peak of physical training. "I've come for my equipment," she explains. Frank nods. "Sheriff had it sent back this afternoon. Special courier." As she checks the contents, Frank clears his throat. 20 years Navy myself. Submarines. Nothing fancy like what you must do, but I thought there was something about you." She smiles slightly. Most people see what they expect to see. 2 weeks later, Detective Wells sits at his desk when his phone rings. "Detective, this is Admiral Wilson. We met briefly during the incident with Commander Hayes. I'm calling to extend an invitation. Commander Hayes is receiving a commendation tomorrow at Naval Station, Norfolk. Given your involvement in the situation, she thought you might want to attend." The next morning, Wells drives to Norfolk. The ceremony is held in a small auditorium with fewer than 50 people, mostly high-ranking officers and personnel who carry themselves with unmistakable military bearing. Admiral Wilson approaches the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we recognize Commander Alexandra Hayes for extraordinary service during Operation Silent Harbor. For security reasons, I can only say that Commander Hayes spent 11 months undercover, identifying and neutralizing a critical threat to our national security." Wells watches as Commander Hayes steps forward in her formal Navy uniform, adorned with ribbons and commendations. She bears little resemblance to the unremarkable woman he arrested at the shooting range. Commander Hayes established herself as one of our foremost experts in counterterrorism and unconventional warfare. After graduating first in her class at Coronado, she became one of the first female operators to qualify for the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, though this fact remains classified. Wells leans forward, beginning to understand the magnitude of the person he had handcuffed and processed as a potential threat. During Operation Silent Harbor, Commander Hayes eliminated 16 confirmed threats while maintaining deep cover. Her actions directly prevented a coordinated attack on 3 eastern seaboard ports that would have resulted in catastrophic loss of life. After the ceremony, Wells approaches her cautiously. "Commander Hayes, congratulations on your commendation. Thank you for coming, Detective," she says, extending her hand. "I want to apologize again for what happened." "No need. You were doing exactly what you should have done, given the information you had," she replies. "In fact, your thoroughness was impressive." 6 months later, Wells stands on the deck of a naval vessel, having accepted a position with the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. His phone buzzes with a text from an unlisted number. "Some of us are always around. Welcome aboard." Wells smiles, recognizing Commander Hayes's words from the shooting range. He knows he'll probably never see her again. People like her operate in shadows, their successes never celebrated publicly, their sacrifices rarely acknowledged. But now he'll be part of the system that supports them, that makes their work possible. He'll help ensure that the next time someone like Commander Hayes needs to maintain cover, there will be protocols in place to protect both the operation and the local authorities doing their jobs. Because some of them are always around. You just don't see them unless you know how to look.